Welcome to the Stories in EDU podcast, the show where we talk with real educators and hear their powerful impact. Their stories will grab you, inspire you, and show you the reach of the work we do. And now, the Bretzman Group presents your hosts, Josh Gauthier and Mandy Taylor.
Welcome back to another episode of the Stories in EDU podcast, which is a great place to listen to some educators sharing stories from their experience in education and in the classroom. And I don't know, every week we do this, it's just a really cool experience to hear the variety of things that are going on out there, have been going on, which really makes you realize how special teachers are in terms of careers and of just the people that are drawn to this career. Mandy, my co-pilot, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thanks so much. This was our first day back. Teachers have, they had a work day today, and then we have a full day of PD tomorrow, and then our kids come back on Thursday. So it was actually kind of a fun day for me to do the podcast tonight, just because I feel like yesterday I wasn't ready, but today I'm ready. Yesterday I was in full-on holiday mode still. Gilmore Girls, hot chocolate. But I'm ready. I'm back now.
Totally get it. Yeah. If you're just listening to this and it's July or whenever you're listening to it, nice hustle. This episode is being recorded January 2nd.
Yes.
So yeah, we just started 2018, which is super exciting. And I'm really excited that this podcast is going to be rolling in full gear this year, and hope you can stick with us for the ride. Joining us on our adventure tonight is Gretchen Bridgers. Gretchen, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited. I've been tuning in. I mean, I chat with y'all on Twitter all the time, so I'm just excited to sit and do this face-to-face and share some good stories.
Excellent. So, Gretchen, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I taught in the elementary classroom for about 8 years, then transitioned to the New Teacher Project as a coach for 3 years. And then I realized that I wanted to get out of that bubble and help people right in my own hometown, but also help people across the states. And so I did it on my own. So now I'm just kind of consulting, which means I go to different schools and school districts and provide PD. I make some educational resources, and I virtual coach teachers that need my help. Right now I've got a new teacher Facebook group that just started, and these teachers are in such need of ideas and tips and just someone to be their cheerleader. So I've really loved that new project.
Which, Josh, I'm not sure if you even realize this, but Gretchen and I have a previous online relationship. I don't even know where we first connected, but with whether it was Twitter or I know Facebook too, and then we started Voxer. She kind of coached me through my actual transition out of the classroom into instructional coaching. And so what I got up a while ago because I bought this card for Gretchen and then I never sent it. So I'm going to show you right now so that I will mail it to you. But it says, real friends inspire, empower, and cheer you on.
Oh my God, I love it.
Because it was just one of those things where my identity was being a teacher. And so when I left the classroom after 17 years, I couldn't decide, can I do this? Am I ready? Am I not? This is my identity. This is what I do. But, and so we kind of worked through all that on Voxer for well over 2 years, I think now. Yeah. When I heard that we were going to interview you for the podcast, I was like, yay.
Yeah, I'm excited. And if no one's heard of Voxer or isn't sure, I'm sure Mandy and I will definitely be willing to just chat with you. But It basically is just a walkie-talkie app. And I love it because I can't type all the time. And if I'm driving in the car, I can just hit the button to record and just chat and catch up. And I've met so many great educators. And as Mandy was saying, you can have such a personal effect by just through voice. So definitely give it a shout out and give it a try.
Yeah.
That's a really neat connection that you have, and that's really wonderful that you've had the opportunity to connect through Twitter and through Voxer and have really good discussions, even though you're, hundreds of miles apart from each other. And I often think about where I entered the education stream 7 years ago. Twitter existed. Like when I saw that it was out there, I jumped into it, and I didn't have to wait for it to happen. It was just there. And now I make connections before conferences, meet people and really strengthen them. I meet people at conferences and I can more easily keep up with them. And I don't know if I would be the educator I am today if I didn't have that access. Like I like you just talked about in your transition from a classroom, like that was who you were. And now you're this different thing. You don't know how to do it. And you had this other person who's like great at coaching people through different aspects of their educational careers. And you were able to talk to her, even though she's over in South Carolina or is it North Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina. And that's just amazing to me that exists now. And I just wonder, like, what was it like before that? Like, I don't know what that world would even be.
I agree. I fell in love with Twitter chats. And so I don't know that I shared this, but I struggled in the classroom. I was in a really bad negative headspace because I was one of those teachers that needed room to spread my wings, try new things, take risks. And our school wasn't doing well. And so the principal asked that everyone tighten the ship. And they all had to do the same thing. I mean, whatever the teacher next to me said, I had to be finishing her sentence when they walked in. And I just felt so stifled. And like, I did not become a teacher for this. Like, I've got different kids. They have different needs. Like, I've got a different style. And I was like, I've got to get out. I was miserable. And everyone at my school was so negative. And it was like nothing was keeping me in the game. But I knew I had this talent and desire within me, but my current circumstances were clouding my judgment and my vision. And when I stumbled across the Twitter chat, I had no idea what it was. I was like, oh my God, these people like love their job and they're happy and they have great ideas. And that is where I found my tribe. And I realized these people are just like me, even though I've never met them, and that could be kind of creepy. You just forget about it and you just get to know one another. And like Mandy was saying before, she and I just were like, hey, we're kind of strangers, but are you cool talking? And it's like, yeah. And you just start that relationship and help each other through these things. And because of that, I stayed in the classroom a few more years and then ended up becoming, a coach and moving on. But it's because of those relationships that I learned how to cultivate relationships with others that would help them through similar things. So I am so glad you brought up Twitter and Twitter chats, because that was transformational in my own journey.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating because, I mean, I was kind of like so many people that have been, this is my 20th year in education. And so when it wasn't normal or natural, it was just one of those things that kind of, for such a long time, it was reading books, talking to people, going to Barnes and Noble, looking at the education section, meeting people at conferences, but you may email, but it wasn't just as easy as it is now. And it's just been so fascinating for my own personal growth. And then my professional growth, because especially you kind of talked about it before with like, I'm a coach, but I'm the only one at my campus with that position. And so I don't have a team. I don't have a group of people that eat lunch at the same time. I don't have, and so I think especially for people in those weird positions, like the dyslexia teacher or the interventionist or the counselor, you kind of have to find like you said, I had to find my tribe. I had to find my people. And when I was in the classroom, I had my team. We were at recess. We were texting all the time. We had that. And when I left the classroom, there was this huge identity thing. And so that really has helped me connect. And then as a coach, it helps me connect other people to, I'm not always the answer to someone's problem in my district. I mean, or on my campus, but I know who is. I'm like, you're asking questions. You need to read this book by Joe Baylor, or you're doing this. And I think follow this girl because she does all this stuff with I don't know, augmented reality or whatever, so you can really kind of, I've tried to become like a connector, so anyway, I think that's so true what you said. It's exciting.
For sure. That connection piece is really a key part of what makes Twitter awesome, and that you don't have to know the answer. Just know a couple people that might, and it really is very freeing. So that's exciting. So Gretchen, you mentioned that you taught in the elementary school level, and a little bit before we went on air or went to start recording, you mentioned you taught second grade and third grade and fifth grade. Is that correct?
You got it.
So I love fifth grade. I really enjoy working with that age group. I would say of any age group I've ever worked with, if I had to pick a favorite, it really would be fifth. It'd be hard to pick somebody else over fifth grade. And I've been able to do so many cool things with that age group of kids. So do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences in that classroom with that age group of kids and maybe some specific things that you thought were really good, and maybe post maybe how you were feeling before you really got into Twitter and some things that happened afterwards, kind of like how it changed or whatever angle you want to take with that.
Yeah. Well, I started out in third and I was in a Title I school. I don't know if y'all are in those kind of schools. So it's just a different ball game. These kids have all their meals at school. We have showers. We do their laundry. I mean, we are their support in every way. So the challenges that my students faced are more adult-like. And so I can't share a lot of personal details. I will just say they were going through things that I had never been in all of my years as an adult. And I wasn't prepared to support them to go through them because I didn't really understand them myself. So I think that was really challenging. And when I got moved up to fifth, it was because my principal said, we have a challenging group. They need someone with strong behavior management. I know that you have that. Come on, give it a try. And I'm like, I don't know. That's not really my thing. I like third grade. They're still like in love with school and school's cool. And I love my teacher. But I don't know, fifth grade, they're just a little sarcastic, and I'm sarcastic too, but I just worried they were like too turned off from school. And so I went up there, and it was a really hard year for me because I had to learn to teach the kid and stop teaching curriculum. So that stretched me because I think I was just brand new out of college. I mean, I think it was like year 3 that I was swapped. And so I knew how to write a lesson plan, I knew how to give this engaging lesson, but I didn't know how to teach a kid who is going through all these sorts of things. And so that was really hard. I had to lean on my principal for help. I had to lean on my counselor and psychologist in the school building for that. I had to lean on my team. Also with Title I schools, there's a lot of newer fresh meat as we're called. So there weren't a lot of veterans for me to turn to. And I ended up getting burnt out just because of all of that's happening. But I will tell you it was the most rewarding job because these kids needed me in a way that I don't know that any other kid would need me. So when I needed a break, I went to a suburban school where I ended up staying and did third grade. And so that was a totally different experience because in comparison to the third grade I taught before, these kids were just innocent and just sweet and a high parental involvement. And so I think for me, the lesson I learned is if you can teach different grades, at different schools, teach at different districts, because it really helps you hone your craft, learn new tricks, because you're not always going to have the same type of kid, same type of parent, same type of troubles to navigate. And so the more you can set yourself up for success by having this variety of experiences, the better off you will be.
Well, and don't you find too with coaching, I know you work in different campuses, so you really get to see that range. I think when I left the classroom, my eyes were opened up to just even how different things are on your own campus in different classrooms, but especially in like your district. I taught at a Title I campus my first 6 years of teaching, and then went over to a much different campus. It's still in our same district. And it's like the fact that these kids are all served by the same district, but the needs were so completely different. It kind of reminds me of like the federal government and then state governments. Like we are all in the United States, but every state has their own unique, challenges and things to consider. And I really have found that to be true, that what my campus needs, what my teachers ask for and need, the resources are very different. Still challenging, not easier, but just a completely different, perspective. And when I was at a title campus, we had training on children in poverty and things like that, and patterns and things like that. I'm at a high performing, higher socioeconomic campus now. But we have a lot of kids that are adopted because a lot of our families can afford that whole process. Right. And so our teachers have asked for specific training on adoption and how can educators better serve adoptive families and foster families and things like that, like just things that you wouldn't think about and consider. So, asking the teachers what they need, what they want, how a coach or a principal, you said you depended on your principal so much, how we can serve those teachers because the needs truly are different.
Yes.
By campus.
And I'm glad you keep saying like what the teachers need and they're willing to ask for it, because what I noticed, one of my principals ended up getting on an action plan quite early in her career because it was different than her, I don't know what you would call it, kind of like her student teaching to be an administrator, was in a different school, high performing school. And then she came to our Title I campus to take over and was like in over her head. And it happened to a teacher who was a first year teacher. She got an action plan really quickly because she wasn't cutting the mustard. Now, I will tell you, both of those people got intense support because when you're on an action plan in my district, that you are forced to go through all this red tape to make sure that you've gotten all the help. That principal ended up becoming a district superintendent for the district. And that teacher ended up becoming teacher of the year, district teacher of the year, and ended up moving on. And it's all because they received support that they needed. Right. And so I love that you said, like, just ask them, make it safe for them to say, I need help with blank. We'll bring in people to train. I'll connect you with different books or resources or tools. Right. Because look what can happen. 2 people who are on the way out were one of our best in the districts in a teaching position and administrative position because they received that kind of intense support. And I just wish more people were comfortable asking and even identifying yourself. What is it I need? What's my handicap or what is my roadblock? And say, hey, I need this. Who can help me? And, like you were saying, sometimes it's, I don't know, but I can find someone to help you. Right. And that's just like the first step.
Yeah.
Very enlightening conversation. There are several things that were popping into my head as you're talking. I think of a large discussion about privilege. When you talk about these Title I schools, these kids are dealing with these adult issues that you go to this other school where the socioeconomic status, it's so heartbreaking how much you can predict about how a student's going to do based on that. And I want to see a world in which that's not the case, or that because it is the case, we find a way to flip that script. I want just me thinking forward, Mandy, just trying to find some people we can have those types of discussions with. And then the other thing I was thinking about that, being a coach myself, that's so beneficial that we're all talking about is that getting out of that bubble, being able to see other places and other teachers teach that our classroom teachers don't get to do.
Yeah, right.
And that's something that I really want to see more of and find ways that we can get instruction rounds happening or whatever you want to call them, because that's really where the real power is. And that's where teachers can identify things they want to do, because they might go watch another teacher teach and be like, oh, I really like how they do that. I want to get better at that.
Yeah.
And I think that those were just some of the things popping into my head as you spoke. We are coming about to the end of our time.
No,
it flies. Trying to keep this a nice, short and commute friendly podcast. But the good news is we can always have you back. And I think we need to, because I think we're barely scratched the surface. And that seems to be the case with everybody we talk to. Like, have you back, because there's more we can talk about.
Yeah.
But that means is it's time for our lightning round, or whatever we want to call it. I still haven't thought of a good name for it yet. Basically what we do at this point at the end is we all get a chance to do one last little quick share about something using the personalized PD game of stories by the Bretzman Group. I think it's $15 for a deck or $20 for 2 off Amazon. So check those out. Great for spurring some discussions with your colleagues or in other professional settings. Really fun if you do a session with these at an ed camp to get just a variety of things talked about. So we've got a card picked here. So we're going to take about a minute. I'm not going to time you, but let's be brief. So this card is be a leader. Tell a story about leadership, maybe about you. Yes, you are a leader. Or maybe about someone else. What stand out as the core principles that make you jab your finger in the air and say, that is leadership? Did you get any tips from the book by Dr. Brad Gustafson, Renegade Leadership? Shameless plug. Nathan Bretzman, who came up with these cards, clearly is a fan of Mr. Dr. Brad Gustafson. So our guest, Gretchen, why don't you go ahead and lead us off with
Okay.
Lead.
Bada bing.
Thank you.
I would say that my lesson is a great leader gets out of the way. And I didn't realize this when I started leading because I thought it was a dog and pony show created by me because that's how you show you're a great leader. But it's actually the ones that are quietest in the room or the ones that, have the most knowledge or the most effective, and being able to find the qualities in each person on your team or in your building, learning how to leverage those and put those people in charge of whatever their strength is. And that's how you lead a group. You find out, hey, what talent do I have? How can I use this? Let's go. Really, a leader's an orchestrator. They're not the ones like down in the trenches. And I think the more that they can utilize everything they have and come together as a team, I think the more effective that they are. So that was a huge transformation. And again, how I led, I stepped back a little bit. I listened more. I empowered people. And it just really makes the ship run smoother and faster, if you won't believe it.
So this summer I read Lead Like a Pirate by Shelley Burgess and Beth Huff, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And one of the things I love about that book is the idea of kind of noticing. I can't remember if they call it, it's not noticing and naming, but it's like when you see somebody do something and you comment on it and you say like, I noticed your intentional use of academic vocabulary. But then you don't leave it at that. You tie that to best practice. Like, so you say, we know that, and, increased academic vocabulary is going to help children this and this and this and this. And so I appreciate your attention to that. And because a lot of times, like in the classroom, something works, but you're not sure why, or this is a good book and the kids respond to it, but you're not really sure why. Or sometimes we do things, but I've heard it called we're unconsciously conscious or something like that. Like, but you're not sure why. And so for me as a leader, one of the things I've been trying to do is help teachers solidify why they do what they do, because what I find is that they're just tossed about, and a new book comes out and they think that everything else they've done before is wrong, or somebody gives a TED talk and they're like, well, I thought that I was doing it right, or the new standards come out and, well, I thought that, so that invalidates what I've done the last 20 years of my career. And and it's like, no, it's that I feel like the strongest teachers are less whipped around. Like they can kind of hear and they go, okay, but this is why I do what I do. And so in my work with the writing project and my work with teaching and coaching is really trying to just help teachers attach what they do with why they do it and help them understand what it is. Because it's not usually me telling them, it's helping them figure it out for themselves, because that's what makes them confident. That's what makes them able to stand their ground with a parent that might be questioning what they're doing, or with an administrator even, and not stand their ground in a combative way, but in a way that is saying, this is intentional and this is why. And I think that in other professions that's celebrated, and in teaching, not so much. And I think that our teachers need to feel empowered to stand by the educational decisions they make. And so that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about that specific leadership book, is that idea of helping people kind of marry the idea of what they do with why they do it.
Excellent. That was
You guys, I don't know if they get to see Mandy's hand movements, but they crack me
They do if they could look at it on YouTube. So that's something that is not just for us only. Like that's going to be out there.
Yeah.
All right. So you both mentioned really, really good things. I loved the talk about knowing the why of what we're doing and encouraging risk taking and some of those pieces and orchestrating. So that's kind of where I was going to go with mine, in that some of my experiences with leading different projects. I found this just this past week. We drove down to Florida, and I ended up from Green Bay down to where we were in Florida. It's a 24-hour drive.
Oh,
We did stop somewhere in the middle, but I drove all of it, both ways.
Jeez.
And part of it is I like to drive, but I think part of it too is I'm a little bit of a control person, and I like I rented the car. So if I drive it, then if something happens, then it's my fault. I don't want somebody else to drive the car. And if we slip off the road or something happens, well, I'm going to be really upset. So when I think about leadership in my experience, that's been the hardest thing for me. But the most important is that ability to delegate and trust the good people you have around you that are going to help you get that done. So being able to trust, I think, is such an important characteristic of a leader, in that, things we've done, like I've helped plan EdCamp GB. We've done TEDx for 2 years, hopefully a third year, though I haven't heard back from my application yet, which is making me nervous. It's another thing for another time. But just trusting that, okay, if I ask this person to help me, and we talked about them doing this specific task, to not get on their case about it and not worry about that, and trust that they're going to come through. So I think that to me is a huge leadership characteristic, is that trust side.
Yeah, love it.
Who's the quote where I don't know if it's been like Twittered or something like but it's the one about like, we don't hire people to tell them what to do. We hire people so that they will tell us what to do.
I've seen that one.
It's just, I can't remember who said, I'll have to look it up, but just the idea of when you hire good people, then you can get out of their way. And that's kind of
that's why you hire good people.
That when you hire them, you are constantly asking for their perspective, their ideas, their thoughts, their, because everybody brings something different to the table that is going to help your building or system, I guess, improve.
Just like this podcast, where having really good people like Mandy and then our guest Gretchen, I just get out of the way and good things happen. It was absolute pleasure talking with you tonight, Gretchen. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy life to join us.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you.
If you want, you can shout out to a place that people can find out more about the things you're doing, or if they want to get in contact to hear more about your consulting work or some of the other experiences.
Yeah, you can contact me at alwaysalesson.com. You'll find a blog, you'll find a podcast, you'll find educational resources, and any way to connect with me, Gretchen at alwaysalesson.com. So feel free to reach out to me. I won't bite, and I love chatting with other people.
Excellent. Well, on behalf of Mandy, I'd like to thank you for tuning in once again to the Stories in EDU podcast, where we hope to be your weekly home to get inspired and hear a little bit more about what's going on in the world of education. And if you're ever interested in telling a story on our podcast, all you have to do is reach out to me or Mandy. More than happy to help you out. I'm at Mr. G Fact of the Day. And Mandy, you are
at Mandy M. Taylor.
Mandy M. Taylor. See, I thought it was that. I'm trying to remember the middle initial. So at Mandy M. Taylor or myself, we'd be happy to have you on the podcast. And we just love talking about stories in education. So wherever you're headed to or wherever you are, we hope you're safe. And we'll catch you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Stories in EDU podcast. Please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, thanks again.